The Say Something podcast is brought to you by amomentwithmorris.com and blackblueprints.com. That's blackblueprints with a Z.com. I'm Jermaine Morris here with the one and only Barry Accius.
In the building, family.
This is the Say Something podcast.
Say something, say something, say something.
Where we get together and address everything going on out here in this life, in this traffic, in these streets.
In these streets.
Something we feel not only we, as in myself and Barry, but we as in everybody should be saying something about.
Man, it's a lot to say.
And this is episode 27.
Coming on 40, baby, soon enough.
Episode 27, which you can always find on SoundCloud.com. You can go to Say Something Podcast with Jermaine Morris and Barry Accius, and we right there. Like it, share it, comment, tell a friend. We appreciate it.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
We appreciate it. Lots going on out here in this life, out here in the traffic. Anything particular you noticed?
Shouts out to our brother Zoe Williams, holding it down. The Zoe What Show, the voice of a
great
reason.
Brother.
Yeah.
Great brother. Voice of a reason.
He
5150 Nation.
Yeah, definitely. He held me down when I was in LA. I actually jumped on the show. I was kind of surprised. He was like, "You getting on the show, right?" I was like, yeah. Had to catch a flight, but jumped on the show. He, held me down. Had some beautiful queens with him.
Always was Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe is.
Always was Zoe.
So that was good. I do appreciate when brothers don't be Hollywood and brothers hold each other down or sisters hold each other down. So that was good. So definitely we need to get him back up here in Sacramento. So I had to just give a big shout out to my brother.
Yeah.
Down while I was in LA.
Brother Zoe, he came up a couple years back. He did our Manhood Mentoring Conference.
That is coming soon.
Yeah, he came to Sacramento, and it was one of the panelist speakers. Breathed a lot of good life into the young men that were there. Wrote a great book, The Relationship Dismount. Sticking the landing after leaving a toxic relationship.
And he got one coming up soon.
The holographic relationship. Already got my pre-order in. I support the brother.
Okay, that's what it is.
Good dude. Lots going on out here that keeps us entertained, keeps us watching the screen, listening to the radio.
Talking about screen, before we really get into it, did you see All Eyez on Me?
I have yet to see it. I realistically, in all honesty, I have not been to a movie theater in almost 9 years.
Are you for real?
So 100%. I have not set foot in a movie theater about 9. And there's
no fire sticked out then.
Nah, I'm gonna keep it real, like little bootleg sites. Typically when I catch stuff. If I support the movie and the people, I'll wait until I can watch it through the proper channels.
Yeah.
If I don't care about who it is, I just want to see the movie, there's some sites you can go to. Okay. But I wouldn't do that to this. To LT Hutton, Benny Boom, all the people involved with this. Yeah. I wouldn't bootleg this. Like I would make sure that if however I see it, they've got their funding through. They got their payday through.
So have you heard some of the commentary?
That I have heard, yes. Because they came out, which I was a little disheartened about.
Yeah. Because
they didn't even let the opening weekend go through.
Nah.
Between like 50 saying the movie's trash.
Why would they do that?
2 reasons, I think. One, if you were close to Pac, if you were around for the era, if you're deep in the culture, and you saw discrepancies, and it just was sitting on you bad, sitting on your heart off, that's a factor. Other ones, pettiness. Outside the game, just being petty. I think 50 hates everything. 50 like that little hater Muppet that was sitting in the balcony just hating on people. So I really don't knock the 50 part. The Jada stuff was a little deeper to me. Jada Pinkett Smith.
I think she had some good points on it.
Yeah, it's not what she said, it was when. Like before she saw the pre-screen, like she saw the like right before the world saw it. Yeah. And she dropped her points right before everybody else saw it. So I think there's a lot of people who already went in feeling a certain kind of way or didn't rush out to see it because this is, right before you go, the person who, she's promoted her whole career, how close she was to Pac. She's saying she don't like how it was portrayed. I just think she should have waited till Monday when all the reviews are in and everyone's going to talk about their point on it. She could have just jumped in when everybody else did instead of dropping it Thursday night before the weekend, numbers went in.
I think that realistically, the era that we live in, it doesn't matter what it is now. A person's going to put their opinion because we now have been empowered with social media. So we can say how we feel And if we have a big platform, people are going to chime in, and you can actually influence, right? And some people just kind of, I think that if you think about it, we honestly go off of people's opinions more than our own instincts.
Yeah.
Think about it when you go to the restaurant. You ask usually your server what's good on the menu. You might be thinking, I want to get this, but you're usually asking them what's good on your menu. And most of the time, if they give you a good review on something, you're going to go buy it, right?
Yeah.
So when I heard Jada's rendition, I respected the fact that she was actually saying and clarifying. And I think that Will probably looked at her as like, well, y'all didn't say y'all was doing all this.
Yeah, I wonder what that household looks like.
Exactly,
all
right?
her pop talk. You married to Will Smith. Just let it go.
Like, wait a minute. You just said, I'm happy that she was like, yo, I have a real relationship with dude. There's no reason for me to, or anyone to make it more than what it was or what it wasn't. So I respected that view, right? Because if it wasn't that, then why do you need to say that? Just to sensationalize the movie more?
It's still Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, Pac had enough of a Hollywood lifestyle in a sense of making a movie, not just Hollywood as in glamour, but just made for Hollywood kind of life that he lived.
Yeah.
You didn't have to glamorize because we saw it. A majority of us saw it. Real life, real time. So I respected that. What I didn't like was before I could even go see the movie, everybody had their reviews up.
Yeah, that was my point. Not what she said or what anybody said. It was when.
Yeah, and the fact that the negativity of it, not understanding if you were around Pac, which I was during that time. I was a youngster coming up in Marin. And the fact that when you see the movie, for those, spoiler alert, he goes from Baltimore to Oakland. It's like, dude, he went to Marin. He went to Marin City. You don't have to say Marin County, but you could have said Marin City, USA, because that's what they call it. Let's be authentic with those things that we know, because those were critical moments. Then from Marin City, it was Oakland. Before, he was hanging out with brothers like Ray Love, met the white girl that connected him with Digital Underground. There's certain things that should have been put in there. I am not myself going to say, because like I said, a guy that has been around Pac was actually performed at Tupac's first record release party in San Francisco. This was crazy too. Crazy story. Dudes got thrown out the window, but that's another story to talk about. But knowing who he was and knowing people affiliated with him, I feel like you should have just stayed authentic as possible, regardless if it's Hollywood, because you have 6 years of making this film right. You should have got it on point. But I am not going to knock it the way other people knock it and make it seem like it's just the worst, most horrible movie ever, because it really wasn't.
Yeah, I think that this is where the big picture and playing the long game is important. Every movie that you've ever seen where they're doing a biopic, Walk the Line, Johnny Cash, that wasn't 100% authentic. James Brown, Get On Up, not 100% authentic. Straight Outta Compton, which did all 9 figures globally, but not 100% authentic. The important part is that you want to be able to keep these movies being made. So when you start coming out right before the release and hurting the ticket sales numbers, that affects you getting the Stevie Wonder movie made. That affects you getting the Marvin Gaye movies made, that the Aretha Franklin movies made. Like that's where people start looking at are these films viable and the money. Well, as soon as they come out, if these people are still alive, there's going to be comments and backlash, which affects ticket sales, and then there becomes apprehension of getting these stories told.
Yeah.
So that's why I said it's not what you have to say. I don't take away anybody's validity of any of their. You have a right to say whatever and feel a certain kind of way. Just let the process go a little bit so we can still keep these movies getting made and studios still greenlighting these projects, because there's a whole lot of stories out there of our legends who are still alive right now. And there are people, like I said, I would love to see the Stevie Wonder story.
I'd love to see the Rick James story.
Yeah, but I'm saying, Stevie, everyone Stevie has touched in his lifetime. I mean, from the Motown days, from all the Smokey Robinsons, the Michael Jacksons, the Diana Ross, the Berry Gordy era, the Quincy Jones era, like all that. And he's still alive now. The new rappers that he's done projects with and experienced from a man who couldn't see them, kind of like similar to the Ray Charles story. But what that dynamic was like, and all the kids, I would be interested to see that story.
Yeah.
But a lot of the people he worked with are still alive. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, well, if we put a movie out, they're gonna, there'd be issues. That's what I don't like. Yeah. I like us to have the opportunity to keep getting these projects made, show that they're financially viable, that they're worth doing, and continue that along, and just, I say you don't have to bite your tongue forever, but at least give the movies a chance to do a little something.
Well, I mean, Negroes have been watching and living inaccurate lives forever.
That's what I'm saying.
10 Commandments. I mean, that has been a generational inaccuracy, and people still watch it and live on it. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just you were willing to bite your tongue about certain things. Don't let this be.
Yeah. Don't open your mouth so to the point to where it's freezing out all other people from going to see the movie that don't know really too much about Pac, or just have been kind of fair weather fans of Pac, or just interested in seeing the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and if you are familiar with Tupac as his legend, as his legacy, he was very vocal about the things that he saw in his life, and whether it be dealing with people on an individual basis, systemic issues. He had issues with law enforcement. He had issues with the government. He was the back and forth with then Vice President Dan Quayle. He had a lot of things that he was vocal about systemically, which I think too many of us are not practicing. If you're so gung-ho that you want to, speak on Pac and the inaccuracies that were portrayed in his movie, how Pac-like are you when you were addressing these things that are going on that he was addressing? Police brutality, which he was addressing in 92, is just as prevalent in 2017. But instead of being distracted by what's going on in movies and media and stuff, which he was involved with, he still was able to be aware of what was happening in the street, talk about that, and be involved. So I would pose the question, how many of us are really aware and practicing our activism and being involved with the problems that we're dealing with right now?
Well, first of all, Pac was just, raised in a revolutionary time, especially by his mother, and that moment by itself. And I think that with music, the coming of age of hip hop was a whole different kind of era back then. It was almost, you were the voice box, the news of the people that didn't get the proper news told. Like, their story wasn't being accurately told. So he was the voice box. He was like our channel 13, Fox 40 before, you have these news outlets.
Yeah, the CNN of the streets.
Yeah, definitely that. So I think where you have now with music, you don't get that relationship from a person that can make a song about I Get Around to keep your head up and then tell you about what's really going on with police brutality, what's the bigger plan and bigger picture. Pac definitely was a Malcolm X before he could really internally come to Malcolm X, because Pac in a moment was still a little red, with Detroit Red, and he was getting into more of his Malcolm, but he never was able to get there. He died at 25.
Yeah.
So when you look at right now, and we talk about our show is basically Say Something, we say that because we believe that the community, the people on the streets are seeing some of these atrocities that's happening all across the world. You need to say something, and a lot of people don't say nothing. And the funny thing about it, they have so much to complain about, but they don't have any moment that they feel they need to move and trying to figure out, well, how should I move? Well, shit, how you move, first of all, is you change your household, or you're trying to change your community. Changing that is going to help change the environments all around you. When you look at the things that are going on right now, especially here in America, like, I don't know when us as black folk are going to really finally just get sick and tired of trying to get this white acceptance, because I believe that some of the things that we're going to be talking about deeply in this show, it's all about when is the light bulb going to go off about us saying, you know what, this is how they feel, this is how they've been feeling. I've even been watching that 30 for 30 documentary with the Lakers versus Boston, and when you watch that, yo, like, this just happened in 79, where they were going back and forth with the busing in Boston. This is 79. This is in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Do Negroes really believe that racism just all of a sudden disappeared?
I don't know if you've been to Boston lately.
I mean,
no. It's the same.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. So the Negroes just believe that, you guys, that happened in 79. We're so blind. We're so Stevie Wonder, unfortunately, being blind to the fact that what is what it is. And so frustrated that they don't realize it. So frustrated that we can't get in. Why are we continuing to beg and plead to get into a system that is not designed for us, that doesn't want us? We have to find the ability to do our own thing.
I think that when we start talking about, first off, being Stevie Wonder to the situation, about being blind to how some things work is true. The other one is that we're easily distracted. So we can notice something and then our attention is taken. You ever seen one of them little light pins that they put on cats and they put them to the wall and the cat will run all the way into the wall because it becomes focused on one thing and oblivious to the others? That's kind of how we get on subjects, to where something can get us up in arms, or we'll be excited, or we'll be angry, or we'll be frustrated, but our attention can be easily swayed. But whatever that got our attention in the first place, it's still staying course and doing what it was doing. Like, we'll look at, the atrocities that have gone on with our law enforcement agencies nationwide. It's not a city or a state issue. So that's when we start talking about the systemic problem, because it would be one thing if we were talking about, like, once upon a time, there was the issue of the corruption of the LAPD. That's a particular group of people, that what they were doing in that particular city, stop and frisk and all that stuff in New York, NYPD, a specific group of people. But if the police department in Cleveland or in Atlanta or Albuquerque were doing something different, then we could just say, okay, these are these groups of people. The problems that we're having are systemic, because the same issues with NYPD are the same issues with OPD, are the same issues with LAPD, are the same issues in Minnesota, the same issues in Idaho. So this is a systemic issue in the way that things are done. So those practices are still going on. Like, the way that this is becoming a police state, and this is the important part, because we get caught up in the minor stuff. We get caught up in the short game. The issue where we're pretending we're a police state is universal. Now, black and brown people get the brunt of everything. Mm-hmm. So if it's a systemic problem, it affects us more and worse because of where we are in this system structure, but it does affect white people too. So we get hung up on if this was a white person, this would have went different. Or if this was this, it would have been. No, we need to look at systemically what's the problem. Like, this is where law enforcement agencies are getting the opportunity. It's an opportunity to come through and just run ruckshot through civilians. To do what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it. And we're catching the brunt of it. But this is a problem that everyone needs to be aware of. When they're pulling black people over at 3 a.m, black people have always been the base point when they address policies and issues in America. Like, there's no way you could have gotten white people to do the Tuskegee experiment.
Not at all.
It would have just popped off something crazy. Let's start with black people and see what happens. Let's treat black people this first, and let's normalize the behavior.
We've been the guinea pigs.
Yeah, so let's normalize this stuff. So what's happened is that the normalization of shooting unarmed civilians, it's become standard now. Like, it's not this. When Rodney King was videotaped getting beaten, that opened the eyes of a lot of people who refuse to believe that type of behavior happens. Like, that just doesn't happen in America. Mm-hmm. Then after you saw it, you were shocked. 2017, there are people who would prefer to get pulled over and worked over with billy clubs and still be able to go home than what's happening now. Yeah. It's been so normalized, and there are a lot of systemic things that are happening that we keep getting distracted from, that we need to start paying more attention to.
Well, I look at it in a simple fact. When you talk about the Rodney King incident, and to the point of what's happening right now, and recently some of the police shootings, and the fact that we waited for the justice system to make right some of the wrong, the fact that we actually were begging for them to do certain things like have body cameras, and having those body cameras has actually done nothing.
They show the same footage that the cell phone camera shows.
It shows the same footage as a cell phone camera, and the police continue to get off.
Yeah.
So anything that we've asked for relatively, and they've given us, right? It's always come with you know what I mean? It's read the fine print.
Exactly.
You just
fine print loopholes. Yeah.
And we got to read the fine print. So, in a sense, you go from Rodney King, he gets beat up, right? And before, Black Panthers were created because of this. Before, people were talking about how brutal the police were, and people didn't believe it. Rodney King comes out, bam. Now, you see it for the truth. Now, in the millennium, here we have where these cops are going more extreme. Now they're gunning us down, they're choking us out, and we're dying. So it becomes from before you could get beat up by the cops, get chased down, get roughed up, and survive. Now you're getting killed. And don't get me wrong, brothers were getting killed before back then as well.
Yeah.
But at the same rate, I don't know. Maybe it's the same rate because now we're so desensitized because we see it. And then that's the thing about when you're seeing it over and over and over again. It becomes so normal. You become so desensitized. We start putting the videos up as if, well, look what just happened again, guys. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like that. We should not be taking that as it's just a cop killing another black person. No.
That's just what they do.
No, that's not supposed to be right. And it's not supposed to be, they went to trial and they beat another case. Like, that's not supposed to be right. So if the Negro cannot understand, and hear me clearly, if you cannot understand this system is not designed for you, that you must create your own system, understand what we're dealing with and what we're playing with, and know they don't like me, I don't like you, cool, and continue to build instead of begging, I think that we'll be moving in a far more better path, because in the last 2 months, they've clearly showed you what their court system is going to do. They've clearly showed you what their henchmen are going to do. And then also, if you want to put pressure on the individuals, put pressure on the system. Forget the police. I feel the police are the pawns that are being put up in the front, that are required, that are paid by our tax money as well, to do the brunt. Okay, you guys already know, when you do certain things, you have to protect us, and we're going to protect you. And they're like, fine, as long as I get off, I'm good. Yeah. Let me do whatever. When you can go in and say, I felt I was in fear for my life, and know that's like a key word for you to get off. Yeah. That's all you have to do. I'm going to use that play every time.
Every time.
So instead of attacking the pawns who are here doing the job, we need to go deeper and attack the system, from the DA to the courts to council members to mayors. That's how you have to utilize the thing. If you want to use people and use power, get that vote. That's the time that it's like, let's vote that person out because this is going on. That's how you change. You change a system. You don't change a bunch of rogue or people that are programmed to do exactly what they're being told by a system. Who employs them? A system. So go ahead and go after them. Before I bring it back to you, it's like school. If my child is in school, her teacher or his teacher is not doing the right thing, I go holler at the teacher. I don't go nowhere, right? Yeah. Then I go to the principal, right? Not getting anywhere with the principal, right? Then I go to the superintendent. Am I not getting anything from the superintendent? Then I'm going to the board. You keep on going up the stairs. Yeah. What we focus so much on is the police. The police. And I think that's a clear mistake, because they don't care, because they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So we must go now to the system that employs them.
Well, I think that's very important in addressing it systemically and going up the ladder, because there's some things that are going on that we have not been paying enough attention to that can drastically affect us. So kind of going to your point, one important part is a thing to always remember is narrative and precedence. So narrative is the story that's told. You know, think when you were a child, it was a fairy tale. Once upon a time, you're kind of setting the stage for what the story is. So the idea now is that black people get shot by police. That's why they use the same words when they give the story. The narrative: did not comply and resisted. That has become the narrative. So now if a black person is shot, the first things you hear is he must have resisted or he didn't comply. It's now become normalized. Precedence means once something has been set and established, that then becomes the point of reference from now on. If you were a kid and you got beat for cursing, if you got spanked for saying a curse word, the precedence is that we beat you when you curse. So if you cuss 2 weeks later, you're expecting to get spanked, because that's what's been set, that's the A to B. So what we've got now is that the precedence and the narrative is that police shooting unarmed civilians is normal. If you didn't do what I said do when I said do it, shooting you is an acceptable outcome to that situation. that police state that we're in. And everybody who sits there, I love speaking to Brother Zoe, that he says all the time, when America has a cold, black people have AIDS. Like when the offset to what's white America to black America. So this has become, it's not a big deal yet to Caucasian America, because they're setting the precedence and the narrative that it's just a matter of time before it shifts from black people aren't complying or resisting, so they're shot, to people are not complying and resisting and getting shot. And if you don't think that it's going to apply to you, there's some paperwork that's being shifted around the White House right now that they're trying to get passed. That has been a campaign that they started at the beginning of the year since good old Donnie T became president.
Mr. 45.
Mr. 45, in his quest to crack down on vagrants and problematic citizens. It's something that they're referring to the Back the Blue Act. Some of you may be familiar. I'm sure most of us aren't. And what this act is that it's policy which is going to give the federal government, the federal police will have final say over local officers and voters, meaning that what comes from up top, they can override what your local police department and sheriff department has decided. And what they want to then do is give extra power into law enforcement agents. Real simple breakdown is that they're going to nearly make every local cop, sheriff, whatever law enforcement who receives any form of federal funding, meaning if the federal government paid for their artillery, paid for their classes and courses, paid for the Alhambra bottle that's in the corner, any department that has received federal funding will get access to this type of blanket of, it will then become a federal crime if you kill, attempt to kill, or conspire to kill any type of law officer. So for some people are like, well, that's how it's supposed to go. No, this is when you start walking about the policies that go on. If you're driving a getaway car, if you're trying to get away from a cop, and you drive anywhere that they deem is near them, that's attempted murder with your automobile. So you may just be on a hit and run. You got 2 strikes and you trying to bolt out. You have no part of you is trying to make contact with any part of them. But if they're bumping you and you bump back on their car, he just tried to take me out with his car. That's now a federal offense. You're getting an automatic dime to whatever you was running from to begin with. If you in conspiracy to kill, you can't even talk about it. You talk about doing damage to cops, they want to make that a federal offense. Here's the other side of the coin for this, and why it's a systemic issue. And when we worry about becoming a police state, is they want to give protection, federal protection, to all local and sheriff's departments and all that. What that means is that the law enforcement departments will be protected civilly from citizens, even if they're found in the wrong for egregious behavior. What that means is all these cases where the family is getting civilly cashed out for unlawful killing of an unarmed man or whatever. Oh, they settled with this for that. Law enforcement won't have to do that anymore. There will be no cash out. There will be no civil liability. There'll be full federal backing and protection for all these law enforcement, which means they can shoot you on the street. There'll be no recovery. You won't get anything from them, but they can double down and do anything to you. And if the rest of society thinks that it's going to just stick with black and brown people, you are misguided as hell.
Well, the funny thing about it is when you break down all those different things, while everybody's complaining about Tupac and worried about who's getting drafted for what team and all the other things that we worry about, because the Negro loves to be entertained.
Yeah.
Negro loves to be entertained. Our drug of choice is really entertainment. Besides the drugs, entertainment, party, let's pretend everything is good. If you Negroes got money, don't have to worry about that. I'm not dealing with it until it hits home. The one scary part about they're talking about not being liable is the fact that at the end of the day, most of these police, when they're acquitted, usually is because a deal was struck, right?
Yeah.
Most of the times, 8 times out of 10, a deal is struck. So it's almost kind of like, all right, we're going to give you this money back up off us. And then they get the money, the families. It's almost kind of like, well, it's never going to bring back a loved one, but at least we got something to move us forward, right?
Yeah.
Now we get the money, we back away.
Yeah, you have to. Just for people to know, when you take the check,
yeah,
you then no longer can speak out about the department and all. It's a payment, it's a payoff. Yeah, just so people know, they're like, how come so and so parents don't speak? Well, no, some people don't know that. When they say, how come we don't hear from these parents anymore? How come we don't hear from these brothers or sisters or kids? Because once you take the settlement, you then are now on hush. So just so we put that out there.
So you got to think about the hush money. Now, what does that mean? It's like, even in a simple fact, we can't get our loved one. We can't even get no money to help whatever the deceased have left, whether it's their kids, whether someone they was taking care of, their girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever. That changes the game because you can't win either or. Yeah. Because even if you don't have a civil lawsuit, you're not going to win because the system has been designed to protect the police, and it's giving them more protection by these laws that they're trying to put. And I do feel that there'll be a lot of pushback, but we have to start pushing back right now. We can't even suggest these things to even be put on a bill, right? Because if we do, the funny thing about it, the when they do it and how they do it and how they manufacture it and how much support police really do. The one thing about it is Blue Lives, it's not a game. It's like they really have, I would say, just as much backing, if not more, and people that are in position to help move and navigate and protect the police as Black Lives Matter.
The police department is the biggest gang in America.
Yeah, most definitely. And when Tupac said it a long time ago, people looked at it like it was crazy. But it's the truth, though. Yeah. The police are the biggest gang, but they are backed up, right, by the biggest corporation, white supremacy. Yeah. So with that being said, of course, we're going to try to create something that not only puts more fear in the people, that the fear or the outbreaks and outrage that we've had in the last couple years, it won't take place. Yeah. That you won't be able to be out and have a Ferguson, right? You won't be able to do that. No. There's no way. You're not going to be able to go ahead and speak out and say accountability, transparency. So really what they're doing is trying to shut the people's voice down.
Yeah, and for people who think about that bill that they're trying to propose, who think like, oh man, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in my area. Here's the thing, how these things work. It's you present almost like when you're doing a negotiation. You ever want to get a job, they ask you how much should you be paid. Say if the average salary is $12 an hour at your particular job, whatever. You come in asking for 19. I mean, you come in, let's just aim high, and then we'll negotiate down. You know, how much you want to buy that for? You know, that's how you start with your negotiation. So you get these big bills that have all these big things in them, and then it gets whittled and worked down to a particular bill that is acceptable that gets passed. So you start with this big old stuff. We want full protection to the law enforcement department. You can't say anything back at them. You can't do anything, no kind of recovery if they F up, none of that. Oh man, we American people ain't gonna go for that. But they may go for 20% of that, 30% of that. Now we've got a little chip started. Then we're gonna present that bill minus the 30% we got next year.
Well, here's the thing.
And then we'll just say, but when you keep willing it down year after year, after enough time, if you don't get ahead of it, and there's no resistance, and there's no putting up, you'll get there.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about it, and it was funny. When I went to LA, was doing a training with some of the work that we do, crime survivors and things like that. My brother Robert Rooks, he broke down some real powerful stuff, and he was basically like, you know, how certain bills get put in place, how the narrative of crime and the war on crime, how that whole thing kind of factored it in, the fear element of it, how it's programmed to us. He said it was three things that push these agendas of it. Like, you know, he said politicians, law enforcement. Then I was like, he said the third one is what? I'm like, the victims. And he's like, yeah, the victims. When you frame something like this, they're going to create such a fear-based agenda that makes you believe, because in one particular time we all thought, lock all these mother effers up, right? Because remember when we went back and I said the polyclass thing in Petaluma, right? All you heard was the white girl, she got kidnapped, she got raped, and here was this white guy that got let go that shouldn't have been on parole or nothing. He came and swooped her up And we're like, take all these criminals to jail. But what it did was do what? It locked up a majority of color folk, right?
Yeah.
So this law gets put into place because of the fear. And in a sense of the fear, when we're not challenging the law, the same thing will be done with this police bill. They will frame it as if it's protecting you.
Exactly.
It's not protecting really the police.
If you're not a criminal, it shouldn't matter to you.
Exactly.
If you're not committing a crime, you shouldn't care.
You shouldn't worry. If you have nothing against the police, it should be okay. And that's how every single time when you break down how this America even became what it is today, it's always been defined by creating a baseline of fear that projects to the people that shouldn't even fall in line to it. They should be like, oh, hell no, because one day it could be me in that position.
Yeah, and going right with what you said, and this is, if you don't think that that's true, or if you're not aware of how that works, the number one thing they teach you when you do advertising and marketing, the campaign is a fear-safe campaign. If you ever watch a commercial, the first thing will happen is the little kids are playing in the room and the lamp breaks. Oh no, everybody's scared that they're never going to be able to put this family lamp back together. So then here comes this brand new safety, crazy glue that can put it right back to the way it was. You're driving down the street and your car breaks down and you're late. Oh no, what am I going to do? Here's this tow truck company that will come in and save you and get you off the busy freeway. Right? Fear Safe is the campaign that they promote everything in this country. Well, I mean, it's like, I think a lot of us are used to seeing it, but we don't really contextualize what that really looks like. Like, we're just so used to seeing things. We're so used to narratives. Like, that's why how our cartoons are set up, our movies, or the resolution always has to be there. They do a thing where they test for movies when they do screenings. And that there's almost it's a beat that a movie has to follow. And if the result does not fit what the normal beat is, they reshoot the ending because people leave feeling a certain kind of way about it. Like, there has to be a fear, a problem, and there has to be that safe resolution for the American society to really accept it. Yeah. That's the campaign we do for everything.
And then going into that, they did the same thing with like the Tupac movie. They did the same thing with the NWA.
Every movie. Every movie.
It's like Dr. Dre was this Superman. He was this great. No.
He was the voice of reason.
He was a woman beater.
He was an alcoholic, drug using woman beater. Yeah,
let's be. Oh, Tupac, I don't do cocaine. Pac sniffed a little blow in his day. You know what I mean? So Pac was against all drugs. He sold a little dope in his day as well. The framework that we create and we buy into it, and why you have to say something, because if you honestly believe that this bill that's going to come up is going to be for the best interest of the people, because here's what's going to end up happening. People who object to when protesters are out stopping freeways or stopping BART systems or just doing everything they do, or looting as they say, rioting as they say. This now comes into fold with all of that. Like, that's going to stop right then and there.
Yeah, that will prevent anybody from blocking the freeway again. Yeah, but what that starts to do, the precedence is that, okay, law enforcement agencies can come in and stop public gatherings of protest against whatever. Now, when you want to do that 60s style protest, no. Now, remember, we changed that.
We changed that.
We don't do that no more.
And at the same point in time, you got to also look at it. Framework. When you are able to invite that type of fuckery in our lives, what are we really going to be able to say, and what are we really going to be able to do in the confines of being able to voice our displeasure, our frustration? And sometimes that's the only thing people can do than run and go get a gun and start shooting police themselves.
Okay, because in keeping with that, there was another protest that just happened with some other real world fuckery that's happening under Donnie T. Under number 45, there was a protest about the proposed bill for the new Health Care Act. So when this first bill, and let's just let you know on this is how this administration is running. This bill was put together without a single public hearing or a public draft session, meaning all of this was a closed door meeting. They all got together, said what they wanted to have, and then presented this bill for the new Health Care Act, which is supposed to be the antithesis to the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare. So Donnie T and all of them got together. This creates, it's a 142-page bill. which goes, that's, first off, the bill don't need to be 142 pages. If you're not familiar with how big bills are, 142 pages is a long ass bill with a whole bunch of extra stuff in it. And it's
extra stuff that usually fucks you over.
Exactly. It's massive Medicaid cuts, and it's to address the law that made having health care mandatory.
And Planned Parenthood cuts as well.
So the tax cuts are to avoid the insurance. So here's the basic breakdown of it is that it's the ability for states to develop what they want to actually have covered. So right now there's, maternity, emergency, mental health, all that stuff that was incorporated in the Affordable Health Care Act bill. They want to wipe all that out. So what they're going to do is they won't make it mandatory for you to have insurance. But what they're going to do is give you like car insurance. We kind of talked about it a little second before. If depending upon what kind of car you have, if your car is a certain age, you can't get full coverage on it. Most basic insurance companies won't cover you because the risk is too high of a factor. Yeah. They want to make that implemented into healthcare. So and it won't be based upon your age. It's going to be, they can sit there and say, an insurance company can say, we're not covering mental health stuff. We're not covering maternity stuff. We're not covering emergency, like with all these different things. They'll no longer have to cover, or they're going to do these exorbitant fees for you to be able to do it. So not only is it going to go, it's going to drastically affect anybody who's on the economic struggle side of the game. So if your paper ain't straight, you are not even going to be able to afford insurance. So it's going to strictly be a big payday for folks who have money. And if you are on the lower end of the economic spectrum, you are about to be ass out like a G-string. So this is what they trying to get passed through right now. And so when this came out, a bunch of people, vets, people, like it was like a wheelchair protest almost. All these people were like, who have all these preconceived problems. Some of them, like I said, who just have problems for years. They're like, based upon what you're trying to prevent, nobody will cover me. Yeah. Like in Medicaid, you want to cut the federal based funding where the state takes care of me. You want to get rid of that, and then you have companies that won't ever cover me. So basically, you're saying the way that we're going to address poor people is just let them die.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it, it's just ridiculous. I mean, there's all these pre-existing conditions that someone has one of those.
Yeah,
somebody has something on that list. The list goes from, this to that and the other. It just, see, this is a problem when, our good counterparts, good white folks, really buy into the bravado of, Donald Trump and make America great again, or AKA make America white again. They honestly believe that he speaks for them. You know what I'm saying? Mm. And what he does is he speaks from the rich, AKA classism.
Classism.
So when you find and you're doing all this stuff because you're so in that moment of, I cannot lose this white privilege, this white acceptance, because my people have had the power and have been the stable of what is actually right in the world. Worldwide, white people feel that they walk on gold streets and they fly above oceans and things of that nature. When you come back down to reality and you figure out like your pay grade doesn't live up to what Donnie Don is,
he's
trying
not
to put
talking
together,
to you.
You then have to start asking yourself and realize maybe all of this push for Donnie and all of this white power and all this supremacy that I'm kicking doesn't really help work, because I'm really in the class of the 1%, and that becomes the defined laughable moment that I have when I see white folk not think that you just in the same boat as me. The only reason that you move differently is because of your skin privilege. That's it. You're pale, and what this American world is based off is this pale power. But at that, when it comes down to the breakage of big bank takes little bank, big bank always win, and you are right with me with little bank.
Yeah, because in tying all these things together, if you don't believe that that's the case, or you don't think we're talking to you, when you really start to put this stuff together, where your health insurance coverages are lax, grandma can't get her Medicaid anymore. You know, your wife is very limited on what the maternity coverage is based upon the policy that you have. The exorbitant fees and the constant increase of college tuitions, the unemployment rate, which is going through. Then you start finding yourself where you want to protest, or you want to have issues, or you want to confront certain things. The police state in which you live in, where your voice is gradually taken away from you one day at a time. The militarization of the police department in your city, which won't allow you to come together and speak on things. And then when they start flexing on you, like, which is the plan, because when it really starts to hit middle of the road, white America, that's when you're going to start to see some unrest and really start seeing some shakeup. They've already put in place. They're already ready for you. So now all these things that you keep thinking are so many years down the road and so removed and detached from your existence, you're going to find yourself in 2020, 2025, speaking what we was talking about in 92.
Yes, sir.
Because it's finally going to be on your doorstep.
Yes, sir.
Like, there are some things that are being in place. I've said before, you know, in this country, you know, racism is the smoke, classism is the fire.
Yeah.
What a lot of people keep equating to black and white issues is a class issue. When you're at a certain pinnacle financially, everybody below you are just broke MFers.
Yes, sir.
Like, I don't care what color you are. You a broke Mexican. You a broke Asian. You a broke Middle Eastern. Broke Negro. Broke Caucasian.
Yep.
All those things that go through, if you can't afford the cover charge, you're going to be outside.
Yep. And
the things that we're talking about and saying something about are things that are going to hit everybody. So this need to get involved, this need to be aware, like these law enforcement laws, these new bills, this Medicaid stuff, all these things are very, very real. And if we don't start getting ourselves involved, everybody's going to find themselves in trouble.
Remember, Obamacare was the worst thing that ever happened to America.
Hear them tell it.
I mean, I'm just so the fact that you guys really, really just hated a black figure that, in my honest opinion, believe that they put in, you know, I don't really believe it was democracy, because how can you have democracy in such a racist place in America? Then when you look at Obamacare, last time I remember, it helped a lot of poor white folk or middle class white folks.
It helped a lot of rich white people too.
And a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
So now, just because the fact that the name Obamacare, which is not even really what it's called, but it's been labeled that.
The Affordable Care Act.
The Affordable Care Act. The fact that that has a black face, that has a black man pushing it, that just shows you how petty, you know, white folks can actually really be. How petty, how we go into this box of why they'll never tell the truth about the American history in its full length, of how everybody really got here, of who really had the power before and how they took the power after. They don't really talk or want to discuss that, because that would be feeble. That would make them look weak. White America always wants to be the strongest, always wants to be the first, and always wants to have the interests of those people that they're protecting. And those people that they're protecting is those who have the money and the power, because I think there's three things that we all want from life. We want to have power, we want to have resources, and we want to have access. And until the rich folk of whites that have that kind of, these three gems, as I would like to call them, want to kind of provide and piece it out, because can you imagine genetically superior black folks having power, resources, and access? What would we do with that?
It would look different out here.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, because I go with what you're saying. I think with some people, they may not get is, so that elite level, that upper echelon economically that runs this country, what you want to get in is that it goes on what we talked about before about the fear safe, because that fear safe campaign is allowing them to double down. So when the Affordable Health Care Act was passed and everybody had to have mandatory insurance coverage, and instantly, what was it, roughly 30 million Americans.
Let's not get it twisted. It wasn't perfect, but it was a move to something. This shit right here is crazy.
Yeah, but this is why you don't know you're getting screwed. This is how you wake up pregnant one day, because you didn't realize you just got fucked by the system. So the Affordable Health Care Act was passed through, and roughly 30 to 40 million Americans instantly had coverage. So when you have coverage, what that means is that you're not coming out of pocket solely for everything that you need, But it doesn't mean that hospitals and medical and pharmaceutical companies don't get paid. It just means they don't get paid by you. So they got an increase in all the pharmaceutical sales that went through these hospitals when that got kicked in. So here's what's going to happen. They want to go through and repeal what that was and implement a new system which will exponentially pay them greater. So what you're paying now was a mandatory $800, $900 you get hit if you don't have coverage. You're thinking the fear is, see, we want to look out for you Americans. We don't want you to have to pay for these poor people who can't get their own coverage. We don't want to take money out of your pocket to pay for them over there because they're too lazy or they're not driven or they don't want to take care of themselves. You shouldn't have to take care of the bottom level of society. Yeah, I don't have to pay for these lazy people over there. Okay, so let's reverse that and put in a new policy which jacks your rates up through the roof. So no, you're not paying for them on the side of the other side of town anymore. You're paying for you, but you're paying a whole lot more. And so now the people that are on the upper echelon are making even more money. They figured out a way to get you to buy into a way that F's yourself. Because they got you so timid that you're going to hook up somebody you don't like, or got you so afraid that you're being forced to pay for coverage for somebody else, to where we're going to put the keys back in your hand, give you more control over your life, only we're going to quadruple your payments to do so.
Yeah, well, America, we are in this world of we have to pay for something. I knew we were coming to the short end of our stick when I had to walk into a grocery store and now I got to pay 10 cents.
Yep.
Some places 15. Right, for a bag.
Even more down south. That's like 25 cents down.
So the notion that people are just looking at certain individuals like you're a lazy mother effer, and that's what it is. A conception of the fact that we look at black folk as like they're the only ones on welfare and need the assistance when it's mostly white folks.
Yeah. If
you want to play the law of average, it scares me.
Not to interrupt you, we're not number one in anything.
Except for mass incarceration, right?
No. I mean, there's this notion that we're the most of. We're not the most on welfare. We're not the most of. We're numerically population not enough to be the most of anything.
Yeah, that's
what I'm saying. But for anybody who hears who thinks that we're committing the most crimes, no we're not.
No,
we're doing the most. No, we're not.
Yeah,
well, but I'm saying, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But that's the narrative. That's the narrative we are.
But it's been framed.
Yeah,
that framework because you don't see a whole bunch of white welfare mamas and fathers plugged out.
They're not the face of poverty.
You know, the face of poverty is black. The face of crime is black. The face of dysfunction is black, right? The face of, sports is black, but controlled by white. So it's always been a moment where blacks are always getting the short end of the stick. When you see this frame and you break it down, if we cannot just simply in America go to the basics of just covering people for health concerns, health issues, the fact that most of what they give us is making us sick anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Starting in the grocery store.
Most of what they gave us, we have been bamboozled to the point where when a lot of us gave up our land to go into this economic boom, or when the industry boom, right, where we're no longer creating our own livestock and farms and things of that nature, bartering from, our neighbor, but allowing government to control base and having them say, here's your chicken, here's your broccoli, here's this big supermarket that don't care too much of nothing about you, that are slaughtering the chickens and the cows however they want and injecting antibiotics to make your food look like, what the hell is this? And now these bodies are going grotesquely out of proportion. As soon as we did these things, we created a form of saying we don't matter about what we feel, how we're going to operate. It only matters on what you feel, and that's the government. So we've been so deluded to believe that the government has our best interest, because why would they ever do anything to disrupt the psyche or make us believe we cannot trust them? Yeah. Why would the government that I pay my tax money, why would this system that has these amendments that protect me, why would they do anything to shame or make me feel like I'm lower than?
Yeah, because that just wouldn't be what this country's built on.
No, why would it be that? Because it's never been been that, right? That's what it is. And that's why I get sick and I get tired. Like, Negroes, wake up and let's start moving in power and stop begging. It's been my motto for a while. That's why with this whole Black Lives Matter, I respect and I understand it, but I am not going to force anybody to change their mind about me. Yeah. Not going to do it. So I'm going to say this is what we're going to do. We're going to build. Then if we have a problem then we just have a problem then. But the simple fact that I don't know how many lashes that black people need to take on the back to where they really realize this is enough's enough. We got to get off this plantation because we're still on it. And just do for self, yo. Do for self. Because if we don't do for self, man, we're going to continue being in this spiral act, this journey, this roller coaster ride that has gotten us nowhere. And then effectively, when you think about all of these things, this is going to be a big cash cow for the medical world.
Yeah, because if you're black in this country, in America, the best way that I always equate it to is that how we look for systemic approval, how we look to be accepted on all planes and all areas from the systemic group that's running things, to me is like the kid who's sitting on the front porch waiting for daddy to come back. Like we treat the system in America like an absentee father. Like we've romanticized who he is. You know, in our minds, our daddy's some big hero, some big star who one day is going to see the light and come home and swoop us up and be the dad that he never was. No. But it's not going to happen.
Not at all.
I say all the time, daddy ain't coming. Like there has to be the realization that there will never be that degree of acceptance, equal playing field, and one for one that we want to see until, and let's just throw this out there real quick. We are in a position to where stuff's going to change. Like, if you are not familiar, just not even, this probably be a whole show in itself, this little thing that's happened. There's something that's happened in America that is real. So, for the first time in American history, the Caucasian mortality rate has exceeded the birth rate. Mm. So, the stuff that you hear about white people speaking for years about they're taking over, we're losing everything, this genetically is actually happening. So, this is the first time that white people are dying at a rate faster than they're breeding. So between immigration and between interracial dating, because you have white people that are either not having enough kids or they're having kids with people who aren't white. Wow. So now that number is actually, it went from stagnant to decline. Mm-hmm. So if things stay the rate that they are, black and brown people typically have more babies. Mm-hmm. We have kids at a higher rate. White people aren't having as many, and they're not having as many with other white people. So before it reaches a point to where it really hits the fan and that number really tilters, please believe they are not going to give up the ball willingly.
Why would they want to give up their power?
I'm saying if you think if you think things have been bad before, when it reaches the point to where that percentage really starts to teeter and the representation really comes into play, where white people, the population number shifts. Yeah. If you think that that's just going to be a easy baton handover, no. That we're going to give this nation up, a white Christian nation, that we're going to just pass the baton to black and brown people who will become the populated majority. This is where I'm saying all these things come in. This is where the militarization of the police department matters. Yeah. This is where the convict lease system matters. This is where the preschool to prison pipeline matters. This is where all these things that are coming into these systemic issues that can oppress and legally shut you down and legally incarcerate you or legally assassinate you. These things matter. And if you don't think that they will, when that really hits and that population shifts, they're projecting somewhere around 2030, 2040. When it teeters, please believe there's going to be some BS before that date comes.
That's why you have to say something. And anybody that thinks that you're talking crazy or racist rhetoric, you stay on course, because that's just someone just trying to take you off your ball game and having you defer from the reality and the truth. Always speak truth to power, and always speak race first, because this is all about race first. They want to stay in power because I know for a fact how white people move and react. They will not be able to survive in jungle times.
There, and like I said, it is not going to be a case of, okay, I'm just going to take my ball and go home. There's going to be some consequences and repercussions.
If they were ever wanted to you know, and I don't know how much time we got left, but if they ever really wanted to share the ball, reparations would have been happened, right? The checks would have been made. You know, they know, and what black folk have to understand, listen, my man, listen, sister, you had a place to where all these resources was stolen for a reason. You were shipped here for a reason. It wasn't because they just needed extra manpower. They had manpower. They just didn't know how to accurately create what you had there in Africa over wherever they want to lay foundation in. They didn't know how to do that. Like, we have to understand that it wasn't a fact of, oh, we don't have any workers. No. Matter of fact, we don't know how to do half this shit. We don't know how to survive. Teach us the way. And when you teach them the way, and when you're able to rip and rape the resources of a country and, navigate it to somewhere else, when you're able to divide, conquer, and still continue to brain fuck a person and a people to the point where in 2017 they still don't even know how much power they truly have, that's pimping on one-on-one for real.
Because all these things that go on out here are things that are ultimately going to touch everybody. And we have to be aware of not just being caught up in the short game, not just being caught up in being entertained, not being caught up in the narratives that are being presented to us, but actually being mindful and aware of what's really, really happening. It may require a little extra research. It may require a little less movie or NBA time. It may require going to some school board meetings, being involved in these right conversations to plan ahead. But what these days are coming ahead are coming ahead. We're not just talking fable tales, fairy tales, and stories of radical talk. These are some real world things that are happening that we're going to have to be aware of and mindful of to maneuver through, not only for our lives, but for the children and the legacy and the lifetimes that are to follow us. These are not just things that we can just sit quietly about. These are things that we're going to have to say something about.
Say something, say something, say something.
I'm Jermaine Morris here with Barry Accius.
Barry Accius, Facebook at Instagram at Team Void, Barry Accius on Twitter, all the same name.
Jermaine Morris on Facebook. Every other social media platform, it's at JMorrisCEO. Also, maybe hit the blog, amomentwithmorris.com, as well as Black Blueprints.
With a Z!
Black Blueprints with a Z.com. This is the Say Something podcast. And until next show,
yes, sir,
we'll holler at you later.